All right. Thanks for the confirmation. Good either evening, afternoon, or morning to everyone. Welcome to AMA 47. It's the 15th of July and 7:30 p.m. UTC. Today we have Eric Harris-Braun. Hey, Eric.
Howdy.
Co-founder and chief engineer, and Mary Camacho, executive director, and then myself, David Atkinson, commercial director. Before we get into the questions, a few thank yous and announcements. So I wanted to give a bit of a shout out to the Sprillo team. They've got a holochain documentation drive, which is actually live at the moment. So if you want to participate, go to @Sprillo, SPRILLOW on Twitter, and I'm sure the guys will share it in the chat links. And then you'll find a Google sign up link, but you better join because it's live right now. Eric, I know you know the Sprillo team incredibly well. Is there anything that you want to add to that?
Not right now. I think there's an actual AMA question that we have, and then I'll go into that.
Okay, cool. And then another announcement, we already have 1,000 developers signed up for the Dev Camp. It's expected to take place in September. As we've reminded you many times over these AMAs, our Dev Camp is coordinated and designed by our community. So for the community, by our community. And they've designed this AMA, this Dev Camp program, so the developers are going to learn holochain by building an application together. So there'll be more announcements as the date for that is finalized. And finally, just a huge thank you to I think there's two components to this. A thank you to the, I guess, camaraderie and kinship and friendship that exists in the various communities. I've known several ecosystem sessions. We've shared stories of different people, developers, non-developers, coming in last moment to support projects or people when they're struggling, and just seeing more and more the, I guess, love, care, support, respect, time, commitment, contribution from people all around our various ecosystems, and the close bonds and relationships they're forming with each other. And yeah, I guess how that's touching people's lives, not just emotionally, but also through work opportunities and all those kind of things. So I just wanted to shout out for all of you who are cultivating like the kind of communities around holochain that we're all proud to be part of, proud to participate in, and can proudly say, that's helping make all of our lives better. So, just wanted to take a little bit of time for that. Okay, well, on switching gears a little bit, let's go to, I guess, no, I was going to say most important thing, but let's say most important. Let's go to a product update. So, Mary, where are we at specifically on the roadmap?
There's a lot to say about where we are right now in product. There's been so much done lately. So if you're looking at the roadmap that's up on holo.host, right now we are testing what we often refer to in our quick updates as infrastructure 2. That's hosted elemental chat on the roadmap. And we've got a pre-release test going out for that right now. It's actually underway right now. We've got, I think it's 56. Can we share the stats from the hosted elemental chat? You can either put it up on the screen or just somehow get out a link for folks. I believe we've got 54 total people so far chatting there. So we're adding people every day to this. And this is the test where we have 100 holoports that are configured to host elemental chat. And when we say there's 54 peers or 54 people, those are using a web browser to access elemental chat and chat. So they're using a holochain application through a web browser. It's hosted on one of the holoports that's configured. And that's the test that's underway. This is really exciting. This is seeing Holo working end to end right now. And we're going to be adding, we have about 240, 250 people that have registered to test Elemental Chat with us in this instance. And so every day we're adding more people. We're doing this slowly because we're really kind of trying to get a rigorous test of what's it like when we add people? How does it continue working the same way each time? This is the first larger test, real test of hosted apps, hosted holochain applications on Holo. So it's important for us to kind of understand what's happening as it grows. So that's exciting news. And this is really, we've said it was coming. We said we're starting. We said we have the host set up. And today you're hearing for the first time that people are actually chatting in this environment. And so far it's going really well. So that's exciting. But there's more. So let me go find my notes. Okay, so another thing on the roadmap that's important to know is that we've actually not updated it. There's one of the milestones that we've already reached, and that's the host console usage milestone. If you're a host and you have been involved in any of the pre-release testing or any of the places where you can see the host console, you will have already seen statistics on, hey, do I have any, am I hosting the application? Right now, we're focused on the web browser test. So we haven't been telling hosts to go check this. But if you were to go check it, as people get added to the test, you will see that you're going to see hosting statistics aggregating on your host console, and you'll be able to see what's been happening with it. So that's pretty exciting. That's been tested. That's working. And then the next thing that's on the roadmap is Holo registration. Now it's connected to HoloFuel, but I want to say that part of it we're actually testing. It's not all the way through, but the beginning parts of Holo registration is even what we use to let people register to use Elemental Chat. That's the kind of the front end of coming into the registration process. And so that's working. And then we've got other parts of the longer term host registration process that are still underway. I want to say something else about what's coming. We've got a lot of work underway. Sometimes it's hard to talk about it. We write these quick updates every couple of days, twice a week. We're going to continue doing that. But some other things that are happening is that we've really been working to make how we organize the work a little bit more sensible. And when we've been working internally to do that, and we're getting ready to do some updates to the roadmap. And that one of the big things is that we're going to make sure that we get updates for a holochain roadmap, because we don't have holochain represented right now in the Holo roadmap. And yet it's a huge part of the work that's being done and a huge part of what's being delivered. So a quick note about that is that we did a holochain release just a week or so ago. This was the second holochain release of the refactored state model version of holochain. And what that set us up for is for regular releases, because we didn't just release holochain with all the new features. We actually did all of the automation that's necessary to be able to continue releasing it regularly. So their hope on the holochain team is to be doing weekly releases for holochain. It may sometimes vary from that, but that's what we're moving towards. So we've really kind of set the frame for that new pattern. Let's see, is there anything else? Yes. We've also done a lot of work on testing infrastructure in Holo. And this is really what's making possible the HoloPort Alpha program that we announced just a week or two ago. And Eric's going to talk a little bit more about that testing infrastructure in a little bit. But pretty much we've been making progress all over the place, and it's really surprising how quickly some of it's now moving. There's a momentum that we kept saying, oh, it'll get easier. There will be more to say. There will be more getting done after we get through this big infrastructure to hosted Elemental Chat kind of milestone. And it's really true. And it's being felt all over in what we're sharing and by the team. And you can see activity in all of our different repos. So it's exciting times right now.
Super. Thank you, Mary. Yeah, so just think to emphasize what Mary just shared at the end of how much progress there is in each of the quick updates and how much there is going on. And there's a focus around infrastructure too, but there's a huge amount of work, as Mary's just sharing, ongoing in other areas and a lot of progress. Okay, talking about somewhere where we have had a little bit of a blocker, Eric, did you get a time frame for when to expect the WASMA fix?
Oh, I wish, but sorry, no time frame. So look, the thing that I know is that our devs are in really close contact with the WASMR team. They are on their comm channels and there's good relations and they talk back and forth. And apparently our use case is a tricky use case and it revealed some things that they hadn't thought through clearly enough. So they've got to actually do some pretty deep work on it. But as far as I know, what I've been told is that it's going well. And the workaround that we have means that we can proceed with development. So it's not a blocker for us. It just means that there's some significant performance issues until the WASMR fix actually lands. So that is the downside of it, but it's not a blocker for it. And I wish I knew when. I'm told it's going to be anytime now, but I don't know.
Cool. Okay. Thank you. So, Mary, how many HoloPorts do you have currently hosting Elemental Chat on? Now, let me just phrase this question so I can get it. So how many HoloPorts do you have, or do you host Elemental Chat on, making sure that it's stable, for what duration of time, and what's the reaction time of the network? Just muted.
I'm still muted. We currently have over 120 HoloPorts in the active pre-release test right now that I was just talking about. These ports have Elemental Chat installed and it's configured for them to host users. We're expecting, as I said, over 250 users to be in the test in the next week or so. The current network and really the current version of Holochain, it has some limitations to how large it can grow and how long that we can keep an app running, because it continues to add data and add gossip and add more activity. So some of this is because we don't have sharding completed and tested and in the current version of Holochain. It's being worked on. It's exciting that we're getting close with it actually, but it's not what we're testing Elemental Chat with right now. And that means that we can't scale up too quickly because everybody is basically holding all of the data on each node. We're not able to split it up and basically share that. And Eric can probably talk about that in more interesting ways than me. But one of the things we're trying to do with this test is to really see how long it can run and what are the limits in a real chatting environment. So that's one of the purposes of the pre-release test before we open it up to the wider community.
You want a quick comment on reaction time thing there?
Yes, please.
It's interesting for the context. So Holochain apps, they've got two different parts to them. They've got the part where you store the data to the DHT and the part where you send signals directly from one node to another one. And so you can design your HoloChat. You need to design your Holochain apps to do both of them. The reaction times look incredibly fast when you do the peer-to-peer message, because that just goes from one machine to the next machine and it's direct, and as long as your browser is open, it works really nicely. The place where there's issues without sharding is in gossip, when you're waiting for the data to get there. Because if you try to get the data there really fast and you hammer gossip and you share with everybody all the time, then you will slow down the reaction times of the gossip, of the signals, the direct signals going through. And so there's a little bit of a balancing act we're playing right now in this test before we have sharding that can slow things down if you add too much in. So that's just a little bit of the context on there for that question.
Yeah, thank you. That's very helpful. Okay, so Eric, building on to that, how difficult will it be to implement the sharding that you've just been talking about as this next step?
All right, so the sharding implementation is actually almost complete. So I don't have my nose in that part of the code. as I've been working more on the Holo side of things. But it can't be very hard because of how quickly it's being done. The hard part was doing the switch from LMDB, one database solution, to SQLite. That took a long time, and we needed to do that switch because SQLite allows us to do the kind of indexing that's necessary to be able to do the sharding itself. But the actual implementation of the sharding isn't that hard. Now, so this is, I'm going to share a little fun insight into the way we do things here. This is kind of like Mary was talking about us being able to do, have some more visibility about how we're doing things, and we want to do more of that. So the sharding, there are 5 stories on our Kanban board. For those of you who are familiar with Agile software development, you have a board with stories on them, and you estimate the complexity of the stories in points. These 5 stories have been estimated out at a total of 23 points. I just looked. And the current throughput for the HoloChain team is about 20 points per week. So how hard is it? It's about 1 week's worth of work left. Now, that does not mean we will have this done in a week, because there's other things that are going done, and it doesn't mean that we estimated it correctly. More things may come up, or we will have it released. But the complexity of it, we've got methods for actually figuring out how hard a particular thing is, the watching its throughput of the team and seeing how it goes. These measures are loose. We're growing in our ability to have them and work with them, but that's part of what we're doing on our team. So I hope that's a fun glimpse of how we're working and how you can measure the complexity of a particular piece of coding that needs to be done.
Let me add one little reflection on now what Eric's saying, because this gets into basically how we do things in the organization with product development. And the thing that Eric's pointing to with these points and how they get estimated, it's the dev time. And then what happens after the developers develop it is that there's almost always this period of testing by others. And these others are sometimes the Holo team testing what HoloChain created. Sometimes it's a bunch of devs that are out there in the community that are pulling the latest and greatest from HoloChain and putting it into their apps and giving feedback. That period of testing of brand new code, of brand new implementations is critical. It gives us the real world experience to be able to find issues, bugs. We're not going to get it right every time when we estimate, but we're really not even going to get it right when we get to the end and run our internal dev tests on them. It has to be tested in the context of applications in order to really know whether it's ready. So sharding will be done by the HoloChain team at one time, and then it will be ready to be used by the Holo team and go out in applications that will be used by our testers several weeks later. Hopefully that's not a real long time. You know, if we can, the more that we can get those timeframes for testing and feedback and all of those loops shortened, that's what really means we're creating more momentum, and we're getting better. We're getting feedback faster. We're doing better tests between our teams. We're having a lot of interaction from the community that's giving us fantastic information about how things are working. But there is that time frame, and I want to make sure everybody's not hearing it like, oh, it's going to be done in a week.
Yeah, that's fair. There's 2 kinds of complexity. There's the complexity of actually developing a chunk of code, and then there's the complexity of how do you check that it was done right, that it doesn't have other effects, that don't interact with other things. And that's a separate level of complexity that I should have included in my answer. Thank you, Mary.
And Eric, just want to pull out one thing. So sharding will help with the tension you identified early on, where you can have both rapid peer-to-peer messages as well as rapid gossip.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Well, more rapid gossip. Peer-to-peer messaging is always going to be faster than the gossip side. That's why we call it eventually consistent. Gossip is something that happens, well, there's 2 phases. Initially, when data gets created, it does get pushed out quickly. We call it the fast push. But then if somebody comes on later and missed the fast push, they're going to get brought up to date later. It's gossip. Gossip networks are always a little bit more slow, but that's the way it works, and it makes sense.
Thank you. All right. So Eric, could you tell us a little bit about like the recent, I think we actually celebrated DevPulse 100 this week.
Woo-hoo!
Okay. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah,
All
that's
right. So
incredible.
it really is incredible. I mean, we're doing one a week for a while. We're one every 2 weeks at the moment. I believe it's yeah, two-ish. Okay. So anyway, in celebrating DevPulse 100, we wrote a little bit about Holo's 3 networks. Could you tell us a little bit more about Holo's networks?
Yeah, this speaks to the thing that Mary was talking about at the beginning about infrastructure and all of the infrastructure that's necessary to put in place to build something as big and complicated as what we're up to. So now that we're landing an environment where we have to have these 200 community testers working on stuff, we also have to have a full up and running Holo network that is the same thing that we can do testing on, because otherwise we would have to wait until the test is done. And not only that, we have to have another network that we can run our nightly tests on, and we have to have networks for being able to push our staging to, right? So what we spent a good while in the whole team creating basically duplicate concurrent sets of services that constitute the Holo network, things like the Holo router and the chaperone server and all of the configurations in our Cloudflare workers that actually manage interconnection between resolving and figuring out which host is going to go to which, which user is going to go to which HoloPort and so on. So there's a bunch of different chunks of integration that we have to be able to spin up simultaneously different ones. And then as we're coding, we can say with any pull request that you add as a coder and you want to have tested, you can indicate which network it's supposed to be run on. And so this is a really powerful tool for us. And that means you can set a HoloPort to point to a network and away it goes. It joins that network and all of the code that you're running will be on that network. And that's a crucial piece of infrastructure for us. So we have the AlphaNet, which is the one that the community testers are using. We have something we call the DevNet, which can run our nightly tests and can do staging and other pieces of it. And we have what we call the FlexNet, which allows us to set up groups of HoloPorts on the flexible network for periods of time for running specific tests. And yeah, and so that, like I said, one of them is being able to have nightly tests that check any code that's been committed during the day, just to make sure that there aren't regressions. So this is all part of that infrastructure. And it takes a long time to get this stuff right. But that infrastructure that allows us to actually have production ready systems. So it's exciting to be getting to that stage now.
Yep. Super. And so Mary, the other thing in DevPulse was the HoloPort Alpha program.
Yeah, we got a bunch of questions after we put out the announcement about the HoloPort Alpha program. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what's in the DevPulse and also just to kind of create some distinction, because Alpha is a period, like our Alpha testing is this period of time while we're, really just testing all the different things that need to be tested before we can get to a real full beta release, okay? But the HoloPort Alpha program, and I want you to hear all of those words together as a title. This is a program for our hosts that they can register for. We're getting ready to open up the registration later this month. And it will allow them to basically say, hey, yes, you can use my HoloPort during Alpha. And for that, we're going to we're going to let them volunteer it if they'd like to, but we'll also offer to pay them in HoloFuel at the end of the program. So that's what the HoloPort Alpha program is. So I wanted to say that first carefully and specifically. There's a couple of requirements for people's ports. And so we tried to talk about those in the DevPulse. One of them is that SSH is on by default. And SSH, help me, Eric, remind me what it stands for.
Secure shell. It basically is a tool that allows us to go in and look at what's happening and download logs and access the HoloPorts. That is the Holo dev team.
Great, thank you. So what's important is that by default, we've turned it on. Prior to this, it was by default off. And this is going to allow us to move HoloPorts from each network from one network to another as we need them, as we need more HoloPorts in different networks. That's what's critical about having it on for us. It's also helpful that we can, if there's problems on some HoloPorts, it allows us to get the logs out of those HoloPorts to actually evaluate what's happening. And that's very, very necessary during this testing period. I just want to note that for some folks who have concerns about this being turned on as a configuration by default, you will be able to turn it off in your host console settings. But if you do, then you won't be able to participate in the HoloPort Alpha program. Okay, so it will be available. Just to note, there's a small bug right now in the user interface for that. You can't actually uncheck it, or if you do, it doesn't make the change. That's going to be fixed in the next week or so. We've got that up there as something we know we need to get handled right away. The other requirement for being part of the HoloPort Alpha program is to have 95% uptime. So this means basically you need to leave your HoloPort on. And the reason this is so important, because you might say, well, you're just testing, you're not using it all the time. Why do I need to leave it on all the time? That just seems like not a good idea. But the issue is that we need them on so that we can move them from one test network to another. We need them on because if you are in a test network and you are being used right now, somebody who's trying to access an application, a hosted application on the port, if they try to access it and your port's turned off, we don't have all of the resilience so that that person will just be redirected to another HoloPort yet. Those are features that are being developed still. That's part of what we still have on the roadmap. So it's really critical that for this testing period, we don't have HoloPorts just being turned off and turned on willy-nilly.
Not to mention that the person who's testing your HoloPort may be in the complete opposite time zone than you.
Very good point.
Oh, thanks, guys. Okay, so some quick response, just more rapid fire questions, especially around HoloPorts and hosting. So Mary, a few for you first. So when do you anticipate more HoloPorts will be made available, and when do you anticipate the HoloPort Nanos will be available?
Yep, we're going to be offering Nano backers an opportunity to pre-order some of the additional HoloPorts that are being manufactured this year. If you guys saw it, we put out an announcement yesterday that basically said that we're canceling our Nano orders because we're unable to get the chips for the Nanos. So additional HoloPorts are being manufactured, more than the ones that were already opened up, and those are going to be available to the Nano backers. And if there's any left after that process, then we will let people know and we'll make some announcements.
Okay, sweet. Okay, can you give some news and details about the cloud version of the HoloPort Nano for those who choose that perk during the Indiegogo crowdfunding campaign, ETA?
Yeah. Cloud ports are going to be enabled after the beta release. This is definitely also an alternative for those who ordered Nanos who are interested in a small hosting option, but it's going to be after beta.
When can users expect to run their personal computers as a HoloPort? This is important due to the worldwide chip shortage affecting HoloPorts being made.
Yep. Again, this is something that we're going to support after the beta launch. If you read through the announcement that we made just yesterday, it really, part of what we're trying to do is to keep our focus on getting everything that we need done for beta. And so we're going to simplify that by only supporting the HoloPort and the HoloPort Plus during alpha.
Okay, super. Thanks, Mary. That's clear. So how will we know the latest version of HPOS? How will I know when to update my HoloPort? And what operating system will you make, or OS will you make HoloChain available on from the start?
Great. Well, HoloPorts update themselves by checking the network and running an auto update process. During the registration of a HoloPort and the setup processes, we'll be telling people what to look for to know that you're on the latest version. Right now, there's a version number in the host console that we're pointing out to people, and that's how they know. Eric, do you want to answer about the OS that you make HoloChain available on from the start?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite, just like right now, HoloChain is available on Linux. And but it runs on Mac, and in some configurations it runs on Windows as well. if you do WSL. It's interesting that the community is working on getting HoloChain working on Windows as we speak, natively. So I'm excited about that. Just learned about that recently.
Cool. Okay, thanks, Eric. With the information, Mary, you have right now, do you think you'll be able to meet the HoloPort delivery estimates in Q4?
Yes, we expect them to be delivered. We expect them to be completed by October and shipped to us. They're going to be on boats. So I'm not sure how long that takes. I can't remember what that was for the last one, but definitely we're expecting to meet them in Q4.
Super. Okay, and I put a down payment. Sorry, this is a question. No, I didn't personally put a down payment. I did, but I put a down payment on a HoloPort Plus, and I'm curious when I will receive it. Thank you for your time.
Yep, and this is the same as the last question. We're expecting them to be manufactured and shipped from the manufacturer in October. They're going on a boat to our warehouses, and we'll let people know if anything changes. Okay,
so a slight variation. Why is the production of HoloPorts so slow, or why is it so hard to get one of them?
Right. Well, going back a little while on this one, when it was slow originally, because we were still building out the HoloPort operating system and Holo's infrastructure. And then we had to figure out how to test them and ensure they would work when they arrived in people's homes. All the manufacturing now, or in the last year or so, has then been disrupted during COVID. And we've had to schedule things based on the availability of the various components. So this is what is available now.
And I assume it's hard to get one because what we've seen in the last year is an increase of demand as well for the HoloPorts, especially as the project's been getting more attention.
We have, and there is, we're keeping this limited because of trying to stay focused on the current version of HoloPorts and HoloPort Pluses that we've already got spec. And that is what we're preparing for the release, because that's what we want to make sure that our team is ready to support between now and then during alpha.
Yep, super. So my HoloPort, next question, sorry, has been online and running 24/7 for a while, but I haven't been able to be involved because it isn't connected to a monitor and a keyboard as is currently required. Will this testing be something I can handle remotely from the dashboard, or will it have the same hands-on requirements?
Great. The HoloPort Alpha program is really the answer for this, because this is the program is going to let your port be used for testing either on the DevNet, the FlexNet, or the AlphaNet that Eric was talking about. But you won't need a keyboard and monitor. Any testing that you might do as an individual, that could be done via a web browser. Even if you're logging into your host console to look at what's happening on the host console, that's through a web browser.
Okay, super. Back to can you please let us know why we have less HoloPorts for sale?
We can just only source as many. I mean, we can only sell as many we can source the components for, is really the answer on that.
When will the HoloPort Nano be available? I think we've answered this one. So yeah, as Mary has just said a few times, per announcement yesterday, and I'm sure the announcement is in the YouTube channel now. Otherwise, you can look at it on our websites and all other places. The Nano is being cancelled, and we're offering either a refund or an upgrade option to our wonderful backers. We cannot source the chips for the Nano at this time. We're focusing on the HoloPort and HoloPort Plus. Okay. Will any more HoloPorts be available to purchase before the mainnet launch?
So there's a limited number that are being made available right now. These are first being made available to the Nano backers if they choose to upgrade. And if there's any left after that, we'll let people know what's available, and that will be on the Holo store.
Okay, as an app developer, if I make an application and need hosting, can I choose a location where the HoloPort is? For example, if there are 3 HoloPorts, say in Canada, Italy, and Japan, is it possible for me to choose only Japan as my hosting?
Yeah, absolutely. Jurisdiction is going to be an option that a publisher of an app can select. That's critical, as a critical requirement for our network.
When can users expect to run their personal computers as a HoloPort? This is important due to the worldwide chip shortage affecting HoloPorts being made.
After beta release, we'll begin to support this as an option.
Okay, well, thanks for the rapid fire. I have to say, like, even answering those questions, it does get me very excited about the infrastructure too, and all of the alpha testing and all the cool stuff being developed and what's possible. So thanks everyone for their questions. I mean, there's a lot about shipping and all sorts of details, but it paints the picture as well that there's a lot of excitement out there for what we're doing. And as it becomes increasingly real, people want to get involved. And so if you're one of these people that really want a HoloPort but can't get your hands on one, I'm sure there are other creative ways to get involved in our ecosystem and community. Whether you jump on Telegram, on Twitter, on the Holochain forum, get in touch with people in the team and other places. I've had 3 or 4 people in the last week want to get involved and volunteer, connecting to me through LinkedIn. So it's not the end of the world. If you can't get your hands on a HoloPort, there are other ways to contribute. Okay, so Eric, switching gears again, haven't had a question like this for you for a little while. Sort of takes me back to 2019. But what commons would you like Holochain to be used to track, e.g. fisheries, Teslas, etc.?
Well, it's funny that Teslas are commons in that question. I find that quite amusing myself. I love this question. Thank you for asking it and choosing it. So I'm actually interested in the most basic of all commons, access to land, right? That's treating land as a commons is the one that is exciting to me. So I took a walk one day and I was walking down the road and I looked to my left and there's a yellow, in the United States, there's a lot of these yellow posted no trespassing signs. And you look to your right, posted no trespassing signs, a beautiful field that goes down to a stream, that goes down to a marsh, posted no trespassing. And it just occurred to me that we live in this world with all this land and we're only allowed to walk on the roads. The only part that's actually public commons is the roads. So at that moment, it just dawned on me, like, what would it be like if, and that's fine, it's the way it is, right? So what are we gonna, I mean, there's good reasons for that. It's not a bad thing. But what if there was like what if I looked at that sign and it didn't say posted no trespassing, or if it did say that, it said posted no trespassing except for those in good standing in the land weaving society. And it says landweaving.com. And you go to the Land Weaving Society, and what you realize is that it's a society of people who have granted specific type of access to their land. Maybe just to walk down and enjoy the stream. Maybe that I've got a little corner of my yard that I would like to have planted because I can't plant it, but why not let other people plant it? Maybe it's for hiking because you have a hiking trail that would be there. Maybe you actually want to share your, actually it's the way couch surfing was, where you have a shed that you want to share. And that there's all kinds of different possibilities of sharing of land. And the question is, what is the language, the ability to do that sharing in a way that is collaborative and breaks up the different bits of sharing that we might want, the bits of commoning that we might have? Well, to me, one of the big possibilities around Holochain is the decentralized space, the unenclosed carrier space that allows for that to happen in a way that makes people feel safe. And that's one that I'm really excited for Holochain to be tracking and coordinating different classes of commons of land.
Thank you. Okay, Mary, at the HoloHost website, it stated that you'll be able to redeem your certificate for HoloFuel within the HoloFuel app after the beta launch of the network in 2021. Is that confirmation that beta will definitely launch this year? Would be awesome if you could address this in the AMA. I think a lot of people are having the same question.
Well, we certainly would like that, but we don't have an exact date for when the beta launch will happen. It'll happen when all the parts and pieces of the roadmap come together, are fully tested and validated. So that's probably just a typo. You know, we have tried to clean up a lot of our writings about this to make sure that we're not promising by a particular date. We'd love that, and I don't know.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Eric, can HoloPort be used for hosting Internet of Things in the future as well?
I guess the question is a little bit odd. So, because the thing is that the Internet of Things is about the world in which there are all these tiny little devices that are connected to the internet. And so many of them are self-hosting. You go connect directly to the device and it tells you what the device is measuring or doing. The question is the device phoning home someplace to send data to a centralized collection place? Well, if the device phones home to a website, a domain name that's being hosted on HoloPorts, well then sure, the HoloPort is going to be hosting Internet of Things. So absolutely yes. And also because HoloPorts, you'll be able to join in your own HoloChain applications, not just, but this is not really, so it depends on what you mean by hosting. But as a user, you'll be able to join your own personal HoloChain applications. And some of those might be Internet of Things applications where your local stuff on your home is sending directly to your own HoloPort. So in that way, it's hosting your own things. It's not hosting it on behalf of other people unless somebody created an app to do that. But so the answer is yes, but it's, as you might think, the answer is a little more complicated. I would say that one of the earliest adopters of HoloChain is RedGrid, and they are building Internet of Things technology for energy company, for energy production and devices that measure energy and manage stuff. And they're an early adopter of HoloChain. I mean, exactly how they will connect with HoloPorts, to be true to the question, I'm not 100% sure of, but we have a lot of interest in the Internet of Things. And we've got scholarly papers that have even been written about HoloChain and the Internet of Things is a really good use case because of data security and data that you don't want data centralized the way it gets done right now.
Can I just add one quick thing to what Eric's saying here around the use, because there's some features that he's talking about on the HoloPort that may not be available immediately at beta. It's at a infrastructure level, it supports it because the way you'll be using the apps, the Holo apps on your HoloPort, like HoloFuel will be installed and you will be self-hosting your HoloFuel on your HoloPort. That is exactly the same way that you might be self-hosting an application that you want to use on your HoloPort. In that way, your HoloPort just becomes like any other device that you've got HoloChain installed that you're running HoloChain, right? But the UI, the way that you're going to access that, how you will do that, all of it may not be ready for every application, for you to do that with every application immediately at beta. Those are some features that we're going to enable a little bit later on in the roadmap. And I just wanted to make sure that the expectations aren't set that that's going to be there immediately, but it's definitely a requirement at an underlying level. So the HoloPorts can do this.
Cool. Thanks both. So Eric, another one. So how can someone who's not a coding Jedi contribute to the Holo and HoloChain ecosystem? Thanks, and keep up the good work.
Well, so like David mentioned earlier, we have a documentation drive that the idea came up with by Connor and Pega from Sprillo, and they are community members that are doing incredible work. And you do not have to be a coding Jedi to work on documentation. You can read it for clarity. You can read it for grammar. It's happening right now. I think they'll post a link in the chat. It's a 24-hour documentation drive. Go there and sign up. There's like all kinds of little jobs that people that are being farmed out to folks. And that's a huge support to us. Documentation is hard for coders. And so being part of this kind of thing is great. But really, the big question is, what are you a Jedi in? If you're not a coding Jedi, are you a teacher? Are you a facilitator? Come and give your teaching skills. You don't have to be no coding to be able to be somebody who helps create curriculum and helps coders figure out how to present things well. There's all kinds of things. So bring whatever skill you do have as a Jedi to the work, and I'm sure there's a place for that to happen. And another thing that you can do is there in the HoloChain ecosystem, there are people who are firing up working HoloChain applications. So Sprillo has Acorn, which is a project management tool. There's also Snapmail that's out there. There's a bunch of things that are happening. And Dave, if you look at David's community, the shows that he's been doing interviewing people, these are standalone holochain applications, and testing them is really useful. Get in on the fun. Please do that.
Yeah, absolutely, Eric. And all of the projects, that have been profiled in the ecosystem sessions and beyond are looking for contribution. There's so many ways. I think I highlighted it again at the top of this AMA. If you're just jumping in now, if you go back to the top in the announcements as well, some of the many ways that you can get involved and in the Holo and Holochain ecosystem. And at a personal level, I cannot recommend it highly enough. And the growth and opportunities I've seen created for people, even as we're pre-beta release of Holo, have been phenomenal. So yeah, I can't recommend enough for someone who's thinking about dipping their toe in to just work out a way to get involved, and it's not that hard. So take the leap. Okay, next one. So I'm a little bit I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to do a little more rapid fire as well for a couple of these. I'm a little bit confused about HOT and Holo Fuel. So if I have a HOT today on Binance for daily trade, and I have nothing to do with the hosting side of things, should I need to do the swap manually when the time comes, or do I just leave it on Binance for automatically swap? Mary, can you help us with that?
I'll take it sort of quickly, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one since it's not the focus of this particular AMA. Yep. First of all, you're not required to swap at beta. That's not a requirement. HOT will continue to exist post beta. Secondly, Binance is not going to be involved in any automatic swap, so that wouldn't make any difference. If you're holding it there, then you're holding it there. We recommend you hold any ERC20 token in your own wallet and not on an exchange's wallet. That's what I have to say right now.
Super, thank you. Okay, so what is a unit of hosting in Holo host terms, Eric?
Okay, so Holo, we measure the cost of hosting in 3 different types of units: bandwidth, disk storage, and CPU usage. The aggregate value of these 3 different components will get reflected in the market of HoloFuel, right? So HoloFuel is a single currency that's going to like aggregate all those things. And so, but different users will, different hosts will can price things differently for different ones of those dimensions. So it's going to be some kind of market aggregate. I guess if you want, you could say that one HoloFuel unit is 1 unit of hosting, but it's really kind of arbitrary. I mean, that's the point. It's like, that's what the unit is. But what it's an aggregate of is CPU, bandwidth, and hosting.
Okay, cool. Thanks. That's clear. Mary, will there be a content moderation system for content such as child pornography, or these kind of contents will be removed in case of legal demands? Asking this about Holo, not Holochain.
Right. There's definitely a difference between Holo and Holochain on this. Apps can absolutely be removed from Holo infrastructure via configuration settings. And what that means is that we can make sure that they are not installed on HoloPorts, and we can make sure that there isn't basically a matching algorithm set to be able to allow users to get directed to the applications on a HoloPort. That's the part of the centralized infrastructure. That's how we're bridging decentralized applications to the centralized internet. So yes, that is possible, and we will. That's how exactly we'll respond to legal demands for things that are, if they've been found to be something that is illegal, and we receive court orders, where we will definitely take action on the Holo network. HAPS will also need to meet technical and some other requirements to be hostable in the first place on Holo. And some of that is still being worked through, but there's a couple of different things I can say about that. A Holochain application isn't immediately it doesn't immediately work on Holo. So there are some technical things that have to be done to make it work on Holo. And then Eric, you want to talk about that, you can. But beyond that, there's this other place that we haven't talked about much that is called the Dev Hub. This is where developers of Holochain applications can base, it's sort of like the GitHub of holochain applications, essentially. And it's where developers of holochain applications will be able to review their apps for each other, will be able to sort of do automated testing. It's going to be the place where we interact with it from an infrastructure perspective for automated testing. And here there will be some sort of ranking and rating system eventually. In the short term, we're going to review which apps go on, especially during alpha and at the early stages of beta, but we don't want to be in this position of we're reviewing every application and that we're monitoring application content. That's not what Holo is going to do. We're like AWS. For the most part, AWS is not looking at the contents of the applications that people put on their servers. What they're doing is being responsive to the outside community if there are complaints. And that's what Holo will do as well.
Okay, so building on that, so Twitter banned Trump. So who will decide if Trump should be banned or not banned from using the Holo network? Greetings from Turkey.
Yeah, so kind of like Mary said, Holo is in a different position from Twitter or Facebook. So Twitter and Facebook had to decide whether they were going to take Trump down, but AWS did not. So Holo is like that. We won't decide about whether an individual user in an app should be taken down or not. Doesn't make sense for us to do. Application providers might do that. They might set their applications up so that they could do that because they want to have that kind of an application. They might need to in their jurisdiction. I will say, however, that hosts, if they know about this, they could say, I'm not going to host, whatever the holochain equivalent of Twitter is, and an individual host could decide it didn't want to do that. But that's not something that Holo will do.
Yep. Do we have enough active, updated HoloPorts for the network to host apps like Junto and Kazuna? Or do we need a third HoloPort batch / downloadable Holo software like virtual machine or the HoloPort cloud that we heard about earlier for a solid network base to be able to run these kind of apps, and especially to be able to run concurrently several apps?
So we don't need another batch. We actually have thousands of HoloPorts out there, so that when they come online, well, even the current ones, the thing that we need is sharding working, and we need to be updating to the latest version of holochain. And we already have some tests that show hundreds of simultaneous apps running at the same time on holochain. It's really the network congestion that's the limiting factor, not the processing power of the HoloPorts. So the current ones will be fine for the current apps that are going to be ready to host on holochain. And yes, more and more of the ones that are out there are going to need to come online and update and be activated. And I hope that'll happen soon. But that's part of what the alpha hosting program is about, is creating an incentive and helping us get to that place. So we really want that to happen and get that ready. But I think we'll be ready for the people who, like Junto and Kazuna, who are building as the holochain versions are released.
Cool, thanks. And just to build on what Eric said, like that, for this question, firstly, as the ecosystem evolves, apps like Junto and Kazuna are also incentivized to support the growth of the hosting ecosystem. Okay? So especially as we move beyond beta, like I'm not talking about incentivized as in we or other people will be paying them, but they're going to want the supply of hosting to grow as the demand for their application grows. So they have an intrinsic incentive to be able to support the growth of the hosting ecosystem.
Yeah, I just want to quickly say something here. I think that, this is a marketplace, right? And when there's a need and when hosts will be, there's going to be a demand and there's going to be an opportunity for hosts to get paid for the hosting of these applications, there's going to be a lot of people saying, oh, great, I want to host now. That this is what will happen. And we already have those people coming to us and asking about it. Just look at all the questions that we received and answered earlier in today's AMA, which is, Can I get a cloud port? Can I get a nano? Can I, like, when will these things be available? When can I host on my own device? There's a ton of demand there, and there are a lot of people already ready to go, interested in this. And as soon as we say, yes, we're ready to support these other options, these other forms of hosting on Holo, it's not just going to be about HoloPorts in the way that we've got them right now. It's going to be about HoloPorts, HoloPort Pluses, whatever version of a nano that may come later. It's going to be about cloud ports, it's going to be about nano cloud ports, it's going to be about do-it-yourself HoloPorts. All of these things will come together and comprise the Holo network and the hosting capacity available on the Holo network.
Yeah, it's important, and I'm really happy that we are focusing now on getting our core code written and working instead of trying to do all that stuff now. It's a visible thing that the community could latch onto, but that would be a lack of focus for us. And you can already is already problematic for us, and we tried. And so I'm really glad that we're doing it in this order. It feels like the right order, and I hope I can reflect that. That I think that's part of us maturing as an organization, is really learning how to focus better and then do things at the appropriate time frames. I think that's a good thing for all of us, even if it feels a little slower and it's a little frustrating. I think, and I hope you can all see that that's actually the mark of a more mature company.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Yeah, and then just, yeah, I think we're also seeing that with the growth of the alpha testing. You know, we know how many ports are required at what time to do what. Test the network. Suddenly, you know, we understand that we need to release sharding. So we're prioritizing what we're developing now in lockstep with our hosting community, in order to improve the hosting experience and the experience of serving applications and in the experience of developing applications. I think like what I'm seeing through this AMA and all of the updates, and as Mary shared at the start, the breadth of the ongoing announcements and updates that we're making across different areas, we're doing that with a really clear focus that is being driven by the design choices that we've made, and be driven in a huge part by the really strong alpha hosting community that will expand as the technology is ready to support that expansion. So yeah, very, very, very excited. Anyway, I've been rambling a little bit. Let me go back to would be really good to know the alpha program and network going to be running actual developer apps. Okay, hang on, I need to actually start reading this question again. So it would be good to know, Mary, like with the alpha program and the alpha network, is it going to be running developer apps? Okay, do you know what? Can you?
Let me jump in.
Thank
Let
you.
me jump in.
Rescue me.
Yes. So basically, I already talked about the HoloPort Alpha program and what it's for. And you know, this is about during this period of alpha testing, are we going to be able to test applications that are developed by community developers? And absolutely, that is what we're going to be doing. And we're starting that already. Internally, I think you might have seen an announcement or a little preview on one of the quick updates. We're already testing an application that was built outside of the Holochain developer team. It's called Elemental Chess, and it's exciting. It's in collaboration, it's in partnership. We knew it was getting developed. We're supporting making it hosting capable, essentially, and making sure that they have all the information that they need to be able to make it hostable. But we've been testing it internally on as a hosted application, and it's working, and it's super exciting. So I think, David, you've talked to some of these folks, and you're going to be talking some more, I understand, soon?
Yeah. So we had an ecosystem session around Elemental Chess a few weeks back, and tomorrow we're recording the next session to actually show Elemental Chess working on Holo. And because of the work that Eric's done with Sin, and because of some of the work that Guillaume has done on turn-based games is actually very, it's I think it was described as trivial to be able to then build other turn-based games, and as the pattern emerges for taking a holochain application, and as Mary referenced earlier, making it easier to operate that on Holo, then what we're going to start to see is well, I'm not going to get ahead of myself, but it isn't difficult to build other turn-based games on holochain and then to Holo. So we can already see all in the gaming world just the beginnings of some really, really exciting stuff. Mary, jump in.
Yeah, well, I just want to say that whatever you may be saying about trivial or not trivial or hard work or a lot of work for developers, it's so different from the user perspective to play a game like chess or to be in a chat app. Okay, so it doesn't matter. Like,
Yep.
It matters for you guys, and it matters for developers that these patterns are something that can be followed and that can be useful and that can be used in all these sort of generalized ways. But I think what's super exciting and what we're pointing to is that already we've got things that are super different available, well, working on Holo. That means through a browser, completely different kinds of applications for users. That's stupendous. I'm excited. So I know, I'm not the only one. I'm watching the internal chat in the company, and our developers are freaking excited right now because they're all going and trying to test out elemental chess. And I'm like, oh no, let's make sure we're actually building we're testing elemental chat, and they're having too much fun testing out elemental chess because they didn't build it. So it's super exciting for them to be playing it too.
Yeah, well, I was pushing them. We should be, if we include a messaging component in elemental chess. But I'll probably ruin this story. But again, if I think about the full circle of this AMA for me, in the announcement when I talked about the ecosystem, so one of the core developers and I were having a chat. He was like, "Do you know what, David? Like, the thing is, we just need chess out there, because like chess, it's a web app, lead chess or lie chess or whatever. I'm not sure the pronunciation, but that you can't, on the web, you can't have a free chess game that can support itself with its community. It has to rely on donations, etc." And at that time, then one of our sort of close, I'm not sure how to describe it, but community that's very close to our organizational membrane had actually been working away on chess for a few months. So suddenly, from one conversation with a core holochain developer saying, "Hey, this would be a really great use case," actually a week later, I was like, "Well, why don't you guys connect and actually play chess on holochain?" And so it's just one of these moments where, to see now that working on Holo, it takes, I think, probably 15 people have been involved in different ways, all connected in different ways, but it works. And as Mary, in following the internal chat, it's not just technically it's working, it's also working socially. It's working. People are supporting each other and really excited about this phenomenal stuff. So yeah, I'm very, very excited, and it's eternally grateful to all of the hard work that's been done from all around the world to get us here and beyond.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Indeed. Thank you.
Is that a wrap?
I was going to say, on that note, thank you for watching AMA number 47. I think we had around 150 viewers. So if you're there, wherever you are in the world, and thanks for joining us, and look forward to continuing the journey with you all. And we'll see you in the coming weeks for AMA number 48.
Bye, everyone.